So without further ado, I shall invite Tim to replace me here and set the context for us, Tim.
Thanks, Martin, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to speak for a few minutes, really, about the global perspective, drawing on a couple of papers that we contributed to the Future of Cities Foresight project that the government has been running, principally looking at what the rest of the world is doing and thinking about the future of cities. What I'm going to do is summarise all of that body of work. I'm going to highlight 4 challenges that I think are widely shared and have been identified, and finish off by pointing to 2 or 3 imperatives that I think emerge out of that agenda. So really I'm going to start by stressing something we probably all intuitively recognise, which is that there's been a really big surge in attention and interest on the future of cities and the future of how they're going to prepare and to plan. This really means that cities can no longer afford to be treated as problems to be contained, but really as places whose promise to some extent needs to be unlocked or certainly optimised. So that's the first reason. I think the second reason is that because cities are feeling the impact so strongly of climate change, of migration, of resource conflicts, and of course terrorism, as we saw last week, there's really pressure on cities to prepare for those kind of known unknowns, if you like, and thinking about the likely need to recover from some kind of unexpected set of events. The third reason, I think, is the fact that we've now really reached a point where we've got a much deeper awareness and knowledge base about the last 150 years really of urbanisation and the successes, but certainly the failures as well that have happened in that time. And we think about the risks that cities have of entering into what we call in the jargon negative path dependency. So that means, for example, cities like Detroit, who might end up entering into becoming too narrowly specialised in one industry, for example, or cities whose governance is no longer fits the physical scale of the city that it's grown out to, say like New York or like Sao Paulo. Or cities that where the transport choices that were originally decided on 50 years ago quickly become outdated or become inefficient for a city. We can think of Birmingham or Los Angeles there. So those are some of the reasons why I think there's so much interest in the future of cities now. Growth. So all in all, there's a huge amount, as you can tell, of activity and some thought as well going into what the future of cities might look like. And I think it's clear that there's not going to be just one single future, not just going to be one single narrative about cities. There's so many different patterns of urbanisation happening, the big mega regions we're seeing in China, to the urbanisation corridors in India, to the compact cities in Central Europe. So, and each city is also at a very different stage of development. And so the future of cities, I think, means something different pretty much for every city, and every city as well in each cycle or in each wave of its development.
We're out of time, but I'm going to give Tim just the last word briefly, if you would.
2 very quick points. One on Lagos, because I was looking at Lagos recently and I was struck by the fact that the UN still try and just describe it as being a city of 12 million people, and that highlights the issue of data, lack of knowledge about complex cities, a huge problem. The second thing is, a lot of the large cities, there's a huge range of models for how they manage themselves, but I think the key thing is that the really fragmented ones always suffer to some extent, and that the ones that do have at least some metropolitan or regional dimension do begin to start creating that kind of shared purpose, that shared identity that Gary spoke about.
Yeah, great. We've clearly only scratched the surface in the hour that we were allowed, but in doing so, I think it's raised lots of questions in my mind, certainly, and I'm sure for you as well. It remains me only to thank you for coming, but particularly to thank our speakers who kept to time and I think provided fascinating accounts on world cities from different perspectives in next to no time. So thank you all very much indeed. That was great.